When you talk about Tesla, it feels like there's no middle ground, especially on Wall Street. The company is this huge source of debate, and it all really comes down to one thing: its valuation. So, how can one company be seen as this incredible success and a spectacular failure at the exact same time? Let's break down what's really going on with this high stakes bet.
And this right here is the central question. It's the whole ballgame, because depending on how you answer this, the stock is either just ridiculously expensive or it's one of the biggest bargains you'll ever see. The gap between those two viewpoints is massive, and it all hinges on how you define what Tesla actually is.
All right, so here's our game plan for tackling this puzzle. First, we'll look at the two competing stories about Tesla. Then we'll dive into the all-or-nothing bet on self-driving cars. After that, we'll compare Tesla's strategy to its rivals, dig into the super important safety data, and finally, we'll imagine what this unsupervised future could really look like. Okay, so to get a handle on the valuation, you have to understand that investors are basically looking at two completely different companies that just happen to trade under the same stock ticker. This slide just lays it out perfectly. On the one hand, you have the car company view. If you look at Tesla like you look at Ford or GM, you're just looking at car sales, profit margins, that kind of stuff. And by those numbers, with all the new EV competition, you might think, as one analyst put it, you'd have to be brain dead to own the stock. But then you've got the other side of the coin, the view that Tesla is really an AI and robotics company that's on the brink of solving full autonomy. If that's your view, then the cars, they're just the beginning. And in that scenario, the company could be, in that same analyst's words, wildly undervalued. So you've got these two extreme opposite views. How do you possibly reconcile them? Well, the whole investment thesis actually boils down to a single massive wager. You know, this idea, which analyst Andy Swan summed up perfectly, isn't some new hot take. For years now, the people who follow this closely have known that investing in Tesla isn't about this quarter's sales numbers. It's about one single massive outcome. So what does a binary bet actually mean? Think of it like this. It's not about slow and steady growth. It's an all-or-nothing shot. Either Tesla solves full autonomy, completely changes the world, and the payoff is gigantic, or it fails. And failure could mean anything. The tech hits a wall, a competitor beats them to it, or regulators just say no way. If that happens, Tesla is just a car company, and that stock looks way, way overvalued. There's almost no middle ground. It's either a home run or a total strikeout. Now, of course, everyone knows about Elon Musk's timelines. They can be, let's say, optimistic. But the people who believe in this binary bet have a different way of looking at it. The idea is, yeah, he might miss the target dates, but eventually he delivers the world-changing tech. So for them, when it happens is way less important than that it happens. Okay, so if everything is riding on this one bet, how does the actual technology work? To really get what Tesla's doing, it's super helpful to compare it to its main rival, Waymo, because their approaches, their whole philosophies are just fundamentally different. And this just nails the divide between them. Waymo's whole strategy is basically building the perfect robot driver for a perfect world. It needs roads that are already mapped out, a working power grid, and data from these super expensive LiDAR sensors. Tesla's goal? It's totally different. It's trying to build an AI that drives like a superhuman, using only cameras to see and react to the messy, chaotic, unpredictable real world, just like a person does. It's a much harder problem to solve, but if they pull it off, the payoff is huge. And look, this isn't just theory. We saw this play out in San Francisco. There was a power outage, the traffic lights went dark, and the Waymo cars, because they lost the infrastructure they depend on, just stopped right in the middle of the road. They blocked traffic all over the city. They held up emergency vehicles. It was a perfect example of what happens when a system built for a perfect world runs into, well, the real world. Okay, so the entire bet on autonomy, the whole bull case for the stock rests on one critical idea, that this system isn't just cool or convenient, but that it's way, way safer than a human driver. That's the kind of conviction you hear from the analysts who've been digging into the numbers. They're not talking about a small improvement. They're talking about a game-changing leap forward in safety. And this is where the whole argument shifts from philosophy to cold, hard data. This chart basically visualizes the entire argument. If you look at accidents per million miles driven, the average human driver is here. Tesla's basic autopilot is already a good bit safer. But then there's full self-driving, or FSD, and it represents this massive drop in accidents. Now, it's important to say this data comes from Tesla, and critics definitely debate it. But this is the advantage that supporters believe will make self-driving cars totally inevitable. So just how much safer are we talking about? The numbers being thrown around are kind of staggering. The argument is that an AI driver with 8 cameras seeing the world in 360 degrees all at once isn't just a little better. It could be 2, 4, or maybe even 6 times safer than a human who gets distracted or tired. All of this, the technology, the competing philosophies, the safety data, it's all leading to one crucial moment. A single event that bulls believe will trigger a massive shift and prove their binary bet was the right one all along. Right now, FSD is supervised. The driver still has to pay attention. But the tipping point, the moment everything changes, is when regulators finally approve it for unsupervised use. Now, that approval is a huge hurdle, and there's no guarantee it'll happen. But if it does, that's when the tech's real power becomes impossible to ignore. So this is basically the roadmap. We're here today in the supervised phase. The big inflection point is that potential regulatory green light for unsupervised driving. Once, or if, that happens, the argument goes that mass adoption will just naturally follow because everyone will see the benefits with their own eyes. And what does that future actually look like? I mean, it's not just a new feature on a car. It would be a total shift in society. It's when you see your neighbors sleeping on their way to work. It's when your friends start telling you stories about how their car drove them home from a party. It's when seeing someone playing a video game behind the wheel is completely normal. That's when the perception changes for everybody. Which kind of leaves us with one last big thought. If this technology really does turn out to be as safe and as transformative as its biggest believers think, well, we could be on the verge of a world where the very idea of driving your own car seems as strange and outdated as riding a horse and buggy. The outcome is anything but certain, but the stakes, they really couldn't be any higher.